Right. Welcome everyone to the Utah Chamber Policy Coalition first annual legislative review. We're really, thank you for joining us, and we're looking forward today to reviewing with everyone what happened during the session, some of the discussions that are happening now, and what we anticipate seeing coming forward. My name is JC Skinner. I am the General Counsel and Vice President of Policy at the Salt Lake Chamber. And we have here with us today a number of panelists, distinguished panelists from across the state, from various chambers, who are here to share with us different perspectives from around the state as to why some of these different issues are important. So I'm going to just do a couple of introductions here real quickly. We have Monica Holdaway from the Box Elder Chamber of Commerce, Chris McCormick from the Cedar City Chamber of Commerce, Jennifer Wesselhoff from the Park City Chamber of Commerce, and Angie Oskathorpe from the Davis County Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us. As we go through these bills today, we may have a couple of legislators who jump in, who may chime in on a few things as well, but we look forward to sharing this with all of you. As we go through this, if you have any questions or things that we don't cover, please feel free to put something in the chat or the question and answer, and we'll try to answer that for you. Additionally, we will be posting in the chat a summary of all of the relevant legislation that passed this last year to business across the state. It's not a comprehensive summary, please be warned, but it will direct you and help you understand a little bit more about what is going on. And I do want to introduce as well, we do have Senator Darren Owens with us today from Southern Utah, one of our champions of business issues across the state. So we're excited to have him with us. And I believe Senator Sandel from Brigham City will also be joining us a little bit later, kind of popping in a little bit. So we're going to get started. I am going to share my screen with everyone here in just one moment. And we're going to walk through what happened during the 2021 legislative session. It's just one moment there. So I'm going to start there. We wanted to start today with just a discussion of the budget from this past legislative session. I think many people know that this year was surprisingly an incredibly robust fiscal year for the state of Utah. Many of you, if you think back, and I know I'm in this position, as I think back to a year ago and where we were and the uncertainty that we were facing as a state, as a nation, as a world, and as business owners in particular, no one really knew how things were going to shake out. There was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of trepidation as to how things were going to go forward and where we would be at this point in time. One of the things that we saw, however, was very, very quickly, the Utah legislature came into a special session, sadly pulled back, I shouldn't say sadly, but probably prudently pulled back a lot of the appropriations that they had just made, cut state budgets in all of the ways that they thought they could to try to reserve as much of those funds for the unexpected journey we had ahead of us. Not only did that occur, but on top of that, with the federal fiscal stimulus money that came into the state, not only individual checks, but PPP loans and other items, the state ended up with an unexpectedly stable and actually larger budget than we have had in the past. Our tax revenue held pretty steady, which is quite remarkable. And as we look at some of the data surrounding this, what we saw and what we know is that we had an interesting turn of many businesses in the state holding firm and doing, pretty steadily as they had from years before. Other businesses that had remarkably strong years, given that their industry catered to the kinds of things that people needed through this past year. But we also have a large segment of our business population that is still struggling and that did struggle throughout the year. However, that balanced out to a pretty stable fiscal year, which meant that we had a $23.5 billion budget in the state of Utah this past year. It's remarkable because it is about $200,000 more than any previous state budget. If you think about the kind of year that we are coming out of, that really is remarkable. We had $1.5 billion in new money that came forward. Senator Owens, I actually just want to jump to you for a second, if we can. You know, as legislators, as you came into this session with this kind of a fiscal scenario ahead of you, you know, what was your approach to the session this year in light of that? I think you're on mute, Senator. There you go. Oh,
I'm good.
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, you got me? No.
Yes, and yes and no. You keep cutting out.
You hear me?
I can, yes.
All right. I'm sorry. Welcome to rural Utah and our broadband here. So Senator Darren Owens, I'll just try to share my thoughts. I'll just share my thoughts going into the session. It was actually kind of emotional as we completed last year and all the work that we did to see that all pulled back. It was really hard. So when we had this kind of budget, it was almost 2 years in one because we pulled everything back, not knowing what the path forward. As a citizen legislature, we went into 7 special sessions last year. Just kept working the budget, working it, and trying to come out of the pandemic. When we're blessed, it's not really us that does the work, it's you people, it's the citizens of the state. But passing 502 bills, still consider those under virtual and mixed and being tested twice a week is just a miracle. It's just so great to be part of Utah.
Thank you, Senator. I will say I do think it was remarkable how quickly the legislature was able to pivot to do 7 special sessions and conduct a full legislative session in the midst of those really challenging circumstances. As you said, I think is a really good illustration of the way that Utah really as a whole was able to pivot and adapt and come out in the form that we were able to come out in. So thank you for all that you all did. I will note we do a lot of work with other entities across the country, and our legislature was unique in that many state legislatures did not want to address some of these really controversial and hot button issues, and so avoided them. And I think we owe a lot of that stability and the ability for us to succeed in many ways to the state being willing to tackle many of those things. So thank you. You know, as we go through that, a lot of issues that really were focused and a lot of great investments because of that really strong fiscal situation that we came into, a lot of really great investments that were able to be made from the state. $273 million in one-time money that was invested into economic development. That means that those are new programs specific for this year that can really help ensure that we recover in the short term, but also looking forward to that kind of strength. $24 million in ongoing economic development programs, $20 million in grants. I do want to highlight this for pandemic impacted businesses. So for those businesses throughout the state that continue to struggle, and we know that there are many of them, and have shown a loss or continue to show, we would really encourage people to look at this grant process that was created through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. They opened up the applications for this yesterday. So we really would encourage those of you who could benefit from this to apply. I will also say that many of you may be aware that the state is receiving about $1.5 billion in additional federal stimulus money under the American Recovery Plan. And we are encouraging the legislature to direct some more of those funds to this particular program, again, to help those businesses that really do need it. Noting, Senator Owens' broadband issues, there was $10 million that was dedicated to rural broadband internet infrastructure throughout the state. It wasn't as much as we had originally hoped for or advocated for, but if in light of everything, if you think about that, that is a significant investment and certainly the largest investment that we have seen. Again, we hope to build on that, and we've recognized the incredible benefit that this brings not only to our business community, but to our education systems as well. And then we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but $115 million invested in infrastructure development accounts around some of the land authorities around our state. We'll also talk about this a little bit more, but a record amount of money invested in infrastructure, both bonding and funding. So significant. This includes things like double tracking Front Runner and some other really significant programs around the state. And actually, Monica, if I can throw this to you for a second, some of the restoring of funding for some of the programs I know that you all have been working on for many years. Maybe you want to touch on the rural economic development funding.
Yeah, I can do that. So this is a bill that Senator Sandel actually had approved in the 2019 session or 2020 session, and then the funding was taken away when COVID happened. And this year it was restored. And that, I don't have the exact numbers, but it is about 200,000 to each of the rural counties to use as economic development. You can do it as grants as the county, or the county can use it in other economic development programs that they see fit. So each rural county benefits from it. And then there's another sum of money that the rural counties can apply for through a grant process to receive it for infrastructure or other larger projects. But this really benefits all of the rural counties in the state. And Senator Sandel worked really hard on getting that approved. It took away some of the state programs and redid it and put the power or the decision making into the individual counties for their economic development growth. So that we really like that. And like I said, Senator Sandel worked really, really hard on doing that. And so that funding was restored this session. And so we were all really glad because it does benefit so many rural counties.
Monica, can you tell, I have counties that are asking about that right now. How do they access that? Because the commissioners haven't seen that.
Yeah, so I think we were discussing this yesterday in my economic development meeting, and I believe, are waiting for the Governor's Office of Economic Development, or Go Utah now, to give direction. It was a part of the Governor's Rural Partnership Board. That's who kind of oversaw it, and since that's been, we're waiting to see what Go Utah does, but it will be through the Go Utah office, so they can reach out and talk to them. It will probably be their Office of Rural Development. We're just not sure which person it will be, but that was discussed yesterday with my county as well. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm. If Senator Sandel comes on, he might have more information when he jumps on. We could maybe pop back.
Thank you. I want to move on now to some economic development bills that were passed and some funding that does go along with that. First, we wanted to highlight the regulatory sandbox amendments. This was a bill that was sponsored by Representative Malloy. We're really excited for this as a business community. It has two main facets to it. Specifically, it creates a new regulatory relief office within GoEd. We're going to talk about this, or now Go Utah. But this office will have the charge to identify state laws, state regulations that maybe are no longer serving the purpose that they need to, or that may be more burdensome than they are rewarding, or exceeding some of those purposes. It also will create a sandbox program that will allow businesses to apply if they have a specific type of disruptive business model that they want to operate under that may not fit under the current regulatory scheme. They can submit an application to this board to be approved to operate kind of in a regulatory free but supervised environment to see if this is something that can work. We have lots of examples of new disruptive business models that have come up in the last decade that we had to make a lot of changes to accommodate. And this allows people to proactively kind of test the waters and see if this is something that can work. And again, if those regulations are maybe a little more burdensome than they need to be. We're really excited that this creates an avenue for businesses to direct these kinds of recommendations, though, even outside of those specific applications. So we're hoping to help, and we'll be doing this working with the Governor's Office of Economic Development to workshop a lot of these ideas. Where can we make some recommendations to pull or tweak some regulations, whether they're legislative imposed regulations or administrative regulations? They're still putting this together. We'll see what this looks like and how this office is really going to operate and interact with businesses, but something that we are really excited to work with you all on over the next years to come. I want to now throw the next couple of bills on the slide over to Jennifer. So take it away.
Thank you. The next bill is House Bill 348, which has been referenced a couple of times already on this call. It basically changes the legislation to change the name of GOED, and which was formerly the Governor's Office of Economic Development, to the new Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, and that will be stylized as the Go Utah office. So we're really excited about this and the potential to really better align state agencies and boards in an effort to create more synergy across all of the programming in Utah to really foster better economic opportunity for all. So I'm really excited to see what this will look like in the future and hopefully create better synergies across the great work that's already being done here in Utah. The next one, Senate Bill 167, is the Utah Film Economic Incentive. And this basically increased the film incentive from about $7 million to double that to $15 million. And, you know, obviously, film is an important part of economic development and economic diversification in Utah. Last year, in 2019 and 20, there were 38 movies and television series that were filmed in Utah that had a tremendous economic impact, almost $150 million in salaries alone, with over 7,500 jobs created just from the film industry. Here in Summit County, obviously film is important to us with the Utah Film Studio and also our beloved Sundance. Sundance generating over almost $170 million for the state of Utah. So we're excited about this incentive. As you know, we lost the Yellowstone TV series to Montana, mostly because of the film incentive that Montana was able to offer, which had a tremendous multi-million-dollar economic impact to Summit County, over $5 million invested in Park City alone in season 1 and season 2, and over $26 million lost to the state of Utah just from the first season of Yellowstone. So excited to bring this back, excited to get more competitive in the film incentive and the film market.
Senator Owens, economic development, I know, is what you do. Is anything that you'd like to add to any of these bills or any of the other economic development issues from the session?
Maybe just thank you, JC. Just clarify on this bill that we're talking about, or the 167 with the incentives. That is all post-performance. So it's not like we're taking tax dollars, 15 million, and just giving it to businesses. They have to come and hold their businesses here. They film their movies, hire our people, and then they have to bring in their receipts. That's when those dollars are kind of given back to them, I guess, or the incentive is put in place. So just so taxpayers know, it's not upfront money, which I think is wise to do that. Boy, this bill that brings the money right to the counties that Senator Sandel ran, it wound down the U-Star grants, and I love how it comes right to the local. So we're really watching that because my counties are waiting to see those dollars so they can use them.
JC, just really quick, I was just thinking, there was some discussion on the amount, so I hope Senator Sandel is able to get on the call and maybe he can verify the amounts, because I've heard a couple of different amounts. I don't know if you know, Senator, the actual amounts. I was kind of going off memory.
I'm texting him right now. I'll get it for you. JC, I would just like to say, coming out of as far as economic development, Utah, I think we're going to be quickly named another year running with our 12th, 13th, 14th as the best managed state, and just kudos to leadership and the people. But we were able to return $100 million back in taxes. 500,000 is $500 million in education, and that's ongoing every year. And return out of a pandemic. Now the dollars that are coming in, we have these ARPA funds, which are going to have a big benefit because Utah we balanced our books. We were able to get through our session without having to disband for a few weeks and recover from COVID. That puts us in a really good place right now because these dollars that are coming in, we'll be able to pull back some state dollars and use these federal dollars for one-time projects that the state would already be considering to fund. And we're not going to spend all of it. So there'll be dollars going forward, but all that is all going to be under a tight window before May 19th. So hang on.
Thanks, Senator. Lots to be done there. You mentioned some of the tax breaks and the tax money that we were able to return to some of the to Utahns this past year. So we wanted to cover some of these tax bills. There were lots of significant tax breaks that took place this year. Chris, from our Cedar City Chamber of Commerce, this is an issue you've worked on for a long time. Do you want to explain some of these to us?
Yeah, so the tangible personal property tax is something that our chamber hears about every single year. And it's a big burden to a lot of our smaller businesses, and it's very cumbersome. It takes a lot of time for people to fill that out. It's really a very inefficient tax. And so it's very difficult and very challenging for many of our members. And I get beat up every single year about it. So I always know it's coming. And I put on my shark bait suit, shark bite suit to make sure that it's okay. But it's something that we've been trying to find positive solutions for every single year. And this year I was excited when Senator Wayne Harper sponsored Senate Bill 18 to raise the exemption from $10,300 up to $50,000. That would have had a major impact on a lot of our small businesses, our startups. You take a look at a restaurant, for instance, they get taxed on every piece of equipment they have in there, whether it's the machines, the tables, the vent-a-hood, the grills, you name it. And there's so many different pieces to that. And, you take a look at some of those businesses and they're very tight margin to begin with. And so it just makes it extremely difficult for them. So we were pretty excited and jumped on board with Senate Bill 18 and felt like it was a step in the right direction, a significant step in the right direction. And so, I had the opportunity to testify on it and talk about the impact to our members. But one of the things that is disappointing is that we made some ground on it. It went from 10,300 exemption to 15,300. So that's a positive step in the right direction. So we'll call that a win. But it's something that I can tell you we will still continue to fight and work towards a better solution for our small businesses and startups. But it was a good process. It's difficult to do the Zoom. The Zoom is convenient to be able to log on and chat with those guys, but you don't get to go and meet with them one-on-one, face-to-face, at the session too. So that's a little bit challenging. But overall, I feel like it's a step in the right direction. It's just something that a lot of businesses struggle with year after year, and so we hope to gain more ground and make more progress towards helping our small businesses in that area. So it's a positive thing. I'm grateful for Senator Harper and Carrie Ann Lisenby, Representative Lisenby, for their efforts on this. And I know it's a big lift. The counties get a significant portion of several of the counties get a significant portion of their revenue from the tangible personal property tax. And so I understand their side on it too, but there's got to be some middle ground somewhere that we can find a better balance or a different way. I know a lot of the businesses have stated to me that they would rather pay in some other area and not have to do this. So for instance, we've got a hotel that takes 4 employees. It takes an entire week to figure out that tax, because it's one thing, it's the new hotel and everything's new, everything's on the wall, you know what year it was purchased. But once they start replacing TVs and refrigerators and computers and different furniture, now you've got to go track which one was purchased what year. That tax has 17 different tables in there, and each one has a different rate. So you have to go and figure out what's the current value of your item, figure out the tax rate, and then, you know, figure out what your tax is on there. And so it's a challenge. It's really frustrating. I've got a manufacturer in Parowan who will not buy new equipment because he's run the numbers. And so he's not going to buy new equipment. He keeps refurbishing his old equipment because of the tax rate being so much higher on the new equipment as the older equipment. So now you're hurting 2 industries in essence, because he's not going to go buy the new equipment. So it's an interesting tax. It's challenging. I understand where the counties come from this, but I really understand the impact of the small businesses. So that's our goal, is to find a solution there that hopefully can be amenable to all parties. And that's always the challenge.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
This one, again, not quite where we wanted it to be, but a big win. So thank you for all of your work on this. Talking about some of the other tax cuts, Angie, if I can go to you to talk about these, perhaps some other real big wins for Utah and hopefully for our workforce. You're on mute.
Absolutely. Thanks, JC. You know, these are some important ones as well. The Social Security benefits, as you know, lots of folks on fixed income. So a great win for that with Representative Brooks. But the one I want to focus on is the SB 11, our military retirement tax amendments. And once again, this was Senator Wayne Harper. So he did some good work on taxes this time. So I'll just kind of explain it this way. As we know, with Hill Air Force Base, we have so many military folks here, and then after 20 years, they can retire. So they can retire really young, and they're looking around. A lot of them been all over the world, so they can choose a lot of different places to retire. And in fact, I was looking on an article of it says the least tax-friendly states for military retirees, and Utah was number 4. And so it was time for us to do some work with this. So it's nice. So basically what it does is it excuses their the income, gives them a tax credit for their retirement pay. Now, the nice thing about that is they can get that tax credit. But then, as you know, we also need a lot of great people in our workforce that is going to help us in our aerospace and all the things that we're doing up on base. And so if we can get them to stick around, then that helps our workforce. They already have the expertise, they have the leadership, they have all these kinds of things. And their pay going forward, their new jobs, let's say their second career, that is not taxing, that doesn't have a tax credit. So we do get the benefit from taxing that. And so not only does it help them to stick around, but we also get it on the back end and get their workforce. And this is about on the books, about a $24 million fiscal note, and it affects about 18,000 people, but we need those people to stick around. We need them to, buy the cars, buy the homes. Well, we got plenty of people buying homes these days, right? But all that tax, and also stick around for our workforce so that we can get companies in here and that we can have people to hire. So good stuff all around.
Thanks, Angie. Yeah, we're going to talk about several bills focused on that workforce development. And again, as Utah's unemployment rate has once again reached about the same level that it was before the pandemic, we really see a difficulty for companies to hire at any level. There is just a workforce shortage. But as we look at some of these particular skilled type of industries where we have a workforce gap, I'm very excited that this bill can help us attract some of those folks who have very specific and training, education and experience, and hopefully help help fill some of those workforce gaps. So a really great addition to the state. As we keep moving through this, a few items, again, focused on workforce and a few other things in the area of labor and employment that we wanted to highlight real quickly. Particularly wanted to highlight HB 404. The Utah Immigration Assistance Center is going to be a new office within the Governor's Office of Economic Development, or excuse me, Economic Opportunity. That's going to take a bit to to get through, but is intended to provide technical assistance to businesses to help them better utilize federal foreign labor programs. So whether this is you're trying to get a specific type of visa to bring someone in with a particular workforce background, or even if we're, as we're looking at different agricultural programs or different things, this office should and will be able to help us coordinate better to help us utilize those resources and that human capital that we really need here in the state to meet our workforce needs of every type. So very excited for the possibilities of this to help us meet, again, those difficult workforce challenges that we deal with. A couple other items that I just wanted to mention. These are not specific bills to private business, but I do think signal a trend that folks should be aware of. HB 139 deals with state governments imposing minimal educational requirements. The goal of this is to try to broaden workforce and remove what some folks see as artificial barriers to certain areas of employment. So unless there's a specific licensing requirement in place, this would prohibit state government from requiring certain degrees or other things along those lines, really to try to broaden opportunity. Again, only applicable to state government, but is a kind of a workforce trend that we're seeing, and so something to put on everyone's radar. Additionally, a workforce air quality bill that would require state agencies to look at better opportunities, particularly on red air days, for employees to work at home. And I think one thing we've all learned this last year is how we can in fact do that. And so again, something only applicable to the state right now, but I think something that they will encourage and that I'm sure we'll be encouraging everyone to utilize as we worry about air quality at certain periods of time. I did want to highlight briefly for everyone a few things that did not pass that I know were of great concern to businesses across the state. Specifically, there was Senator Cullimore sponsored the non-compete amendments bill. Always gets everyone's attention, always kind of raises emotions when this issue comes up. Just wanted to make sure everyone on the radar, there was a lot of discussion about this bill. The original version of this bill really would have just codified existing case law. It did not make substantive changes to the law. Nevertheless, we were watching it closely. As it was moving over to the House, it was amended in a way that would have limited what would have been considered protected business information, or the information that could have been kept confidential. And so working with sponsors, we were able to hold that one. And so it did not move. I know I get a lot of questions about what happened with that bill. Likewise, there were 2 state minimum wage bills that were introduced. They didn't get a lot of discussion or a lot of traction, but they were on the federal level, and I'm sure will continue. But neither of those bills passed here in the state of Utah. Additionally, did want to highlight, there were a couple of bills that were introduced related to employees being able to require different kinds of medical procedures. This bill really was, I think, prompted by some of the pandemic-related requirements that had been in place, masks and upcoming vaccines that at the time weren't really the issue, but we knew those would be the next issue. This bill did not pass. So as it is right now, just so everyone is aware, employers have the flexibility to do whatever you think is best for your business. If businesses want to require masks, businesses can require masks. If businesses want to require a vaccine of their employees or their patrons, they can. I'm not aware of very many businesses who want to do that, but that is an option, and that is something that you have the ability to do. I am hearing that there is some continuing discussion about this amongst legislators. It wouldn't surprise me if we see something along these lines come up in one of the special sessions. But just to put that on everyone's radar, as things currently stand, businesses do have that ability to do that. If you have views or questions or thoughts about this, I would encourage you to reach out to your chambers or to us, and we're happy to help direct that. We know this will be probably a topic of conversation coming out throughout the summer. And Senator Owens, I see you nodding. That probably is the case.
Yep, the word already in the air. It's going to happen.
We'll continue to talk about that.
Okay.
As that goes forward. But in light of that, again, coming out of the pandemic, I did want to highlight a couple of bills specific to emergency powers and current states of things. I know that, these are things that everyone has questions about. Specifically, and I think, Senator, you are the Senate sponsor of HB 294, the Pandemic Emergency Powers Amendments, or the Pandemic Endgame Bill. Happy to turn it over to you if you want to give people just the basics of that one.
Sure, thanks, JC. Well, this bill was to try to give us at least for not all legislators, and not everybody agrees with the bill, and that that's always the case. This one, I was the state or the Senate sponsor that started to wind down. What does it look like when we start to overcome it? So there were some thresholds set in place. 1.65 million vaccines already needed to be out and available to the people. We needed to be below 15% in our ICU beds. And we put things like that so when we hit it, we could start to, it's the balance of power between the executive branch, judicial branch, and legislative. And this one was for a lot of legislators to say, we want to back down the mandates of the mask. So that and some other terminating other powers. So really what it did, there's been some controversy. It's still hard at school, but we tried to keep the schools in mask and give them that flexibility and freedom. But overall, I think it's a good thing for the state to see what the data looks like and so we're not all wearing masks or not and in rebellion for no reason. All of Utah obviously is not made the same, and I rarely see people, unless I'm in the college, wearing masks here.
I do want to highlight this is something that has caused and resulted in a lot of questions from different people about kind of what does this mean. The bill did allow county governments to continue mask mandates after this April 10th date. There's no county that has done that thus far. They still could if they wanted to. But Salt Lake City, however, did continue that mask mandate. So across the state right now, there is still a recommendation. I do believe that the health department did issue an order requiring that for gatherings of 50 or more people. So that would still be in place. But these orders can only stay in place until these three provisions that we've listed here come into play. So I just wanted to give folks, as of yesterday, kind of the update here. So when you're looking at the 14-day case average, it had to be below 191 per 100,000 people. We're currently at 170.4, so we are below that one. The 7-day average for ICU units with COVID patients needed to be below 15%. We are at 11.5%. In that regard. And then the final parameter that allows these types of provisions to remain in place, so again, the gathering and in Salt Lake City, is that the federal government has allocated, not that we've administered, 1,633,000 first doses. Again, it doesn't mean that they've been administered. As of yesterday, we had been allocated 1,335,645 first doses. So that is moving along. I do think that the problems with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and a few other things have slowed that down a little bit, but that is moving along. I think that, every week we get different doses and we don't know where that is. But so we are close to about 300,000 first doses away from that particular bill. So just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of kind of where that currently stands. Wanted to move next to, again, as we talk about workforce development and the importance of these issues here in the state. I'm going to turn this one back over to Jennifer from Park City to cover for us. So Jennifer.
Thank you, JC. House Bill 328 is the Adult Learners Grant Program, and this is really about workforce development and alignment, especially in industries of need. So this is a bill that provides a grant for people who are 26 years or older, who have financial need, who are pursuing an online degree or certificate in an industry that we have a great need for more employees. That includes like manufacturing and technology, I believe that the legislature allocated about $1 million for this program. And it's really exciting that we have the opportunity to incentivize and encourage maybe the older workforce and align them with the needs and the future needs in Utah.
Thanks, Jennifer. Again, as we've mentioned, this workforce development is a top priority for Utah's business community. And Senator Sandel has joined us now. Thank you. I know he's had some conflicts. So Senator, I'm going to put you on the spot here just a second, while we're talking about workforce development. I know in northern Utah, this is a significant issue with some of the particular industries in your area. So I wanted you to chime in on that, but also we've talked quite a bit about the restoration of the funds for your rural economic development program that passed last year and came into play this year. And if you happen to know, I know I'm catching you cold here offhand, there have been some questions about how much was appropriated for that.
Thanks, JC. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You've caught me doing two different things. I'm actually on a tractor with a grain drill behind me. But yeah, the rural grants program got funded at $200,000. Last year, we ended up with just 100,000. We had hoped for two, but after COVID, they knocked that in half. And the guaranteed money this year went up to $200,000 per rural county. And we did not get the other 3.2 million restored that would have allowed us to do the competitive grant program. So still looking at trying to do that going into the future. But we should for sure see, and I don't see any reason why we won't see that other money come to the counties this year.
Thanks, Senator. We want to move next to our discussion about infrastructure, some significant infrastructure investment that came in this year. Some things that we can, I think, be really excited about. I just want to highlight just real quickly, and then we're going to have, and actually, Monica, you can jump in here, but just so folks know, the Point of the Mountain Development Commission, which is different from the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority, which is developing the prison site. This is more of a commission that's looking at regional growth and transportation issues. That commission was kind of shifted to focus on those issues and was continued. Additionally, I mentioned before there was $115 million that was invested in an infrastructure bank framework for the inland port. There were also these types of infrastructure banks that were set up for the Point of the Mountain State Land Authority and military and MIDA, as many of you know. Money was not put into those immediately, but they are in existence. And Monica, if I can turn it over to you to talk a little bit about HB 433.
So I know that the Salt Lake Chamber did send out the document that talks a little bit more in detail, but this one was really exciting because it had so many projects in it. It's, like you mentioned earlier, double tracks and for front runner in some areas, as well as bus rapid transit in areas in Salt Lake City. But it also has transportation infrastructure projects throughout the whole state. So here in Brigham City, there's some funding that is going towards an overpass in our community over the railroad tracks. And I know Representative Ferry and Senator Sandel worked really hard to get that included for the areas. But I just want to stress everyone to go in, look at the bill, because I believe there's a list of a lot of transportation projects all over the whole state, and to see what funding your area might be receiving from this infrastructure bill, because it was a huge bill, a lot of money allocated throughout the whole state.
Yeah, and I will offer Senator Owens, Senator Sandel, if either of you want to comment on this one. This is probably the largest, I think, investment in transportation, transit projects, and authorization of bonding that we've seen. And I think this becomes particularly important in the light of the federal stimulus money that's coming in as well, which can be used for infrastructure. And there is a pending, incredibly large infrastructure bill and package pending with Congress as well through the Biden administration. So if you just want to talk a little bit about kind of that, what is legislative leadership thinking? What are you all thinking about infrastructure development in light of all this? Senator Owens, go ahead.
Okay, I'll chime in. I just admire a citizen legislator who can listen to his ear pods, drive a tractor, and talk on Zoom at the same time. It's amazing. We are in a unique place that we'll never see again, I don't think, because of this influx of money and the Utah way of staying above the line anyway. So the legislature, the dollars, this is not infrastructure, but the other amount that's coming in a variety of forms was about 2.7 billion. And then on infrastructure, well beyond that. So we're going to change. We need to take the dollars and use them wisely. We will likely beef up all of our rainy day funds. That's what I'm hearing. And this is all has to be allocated or spoken for, at least put in its silos by May 19th. So, Senator, if you want to add to that.
I just want to echo what Senator Owens said. Between what we did last year from the legislative point, we put $1 billion pretty much into infrastructure. We lay on top of that what COVID is going to do, this COVID relief package that we know has got $1.5 billion coming to the state, another like 1.8 billion going to cities and counties. I think we'd really miss if we didn't take the opportunity to work together as communities and counties, combine our money where needed, and put it into something that will benefit people 40 and 50 years from now. Whatever that looks like in your community, if it's sewer, if it's broadband, whatever that looks like, I think it's really, we would really miss, because we don't have the need that a lot of states do to backfill budgets, because quite honestly, we took the cuts last year at the beginning of COVID and took the real conservative approach. Now we have an ability to go long-term with this additional money that's coming. But honestly, it scares me to death because I'm pretty sure it's quite inflationary into our system, but we've got it. We're not going to deal with it any other way other than spend it judiciously.
Thank you, Senator. I think it is important to note the state does have until 2024 to spend this money. So unlike the first round of CARES Act funding that had to be spent in a much more compressed time frame, there is some time to do this. So the legislature does need to accept the money, but they don't have to spend it right away. And every indication I'm getting is that the approach, and I think we all appreciate this, has been a very deliberate one to ensure that this is invested in the way that will best benefit Utah's future across the board. So appreciate that deliberative approach in doing so. Senator Owens.
One more comment to that, carrying over what Senator Sandel said, is as you're looking in your communities for possible places to put this money to make it last and impactful, don't try to create something that's going to create ongoing cost to the state. It needs to be infrastructure, things that we can correct. It can even be buildings that might need new HVC and all of those systems, but we don't want to add on, because this money is not always going to be here. We don't want to add on ongoing cost with it.
I will also add to that, Senator. I think it's important to note, and you can find this information online. Legislative staff has done a great job summarizing the various kind of tracks of money that are coming to the state, but there'll be a significant amount of money that's specific to education. And there is a significant amount of money going to both county and in many instances, more local governments. So a lot of money coming in those areas. In your individual areas, I would also encourage working closely with your city and county governments as to how they're going to invest this money with the same kind of principles in mind that Senator Sandel and Senator Owens have just mentioned. Again, a significant opportunity for the state. Want to make sure that we get to cover tourism, which was one of the more significantly impacted industries this past year, but also one that impacts every corner of the state of Utah. So I want to focus a little bit on some of the things that were done there. Jennifer, if you want to walk us through those, and I know, Monica, we want to make sure that you tell us a little bit more too after Jennifer does this about the Main Street program.
Perfect. Thank you. First, I wanted just to say thank you for the full funding to the Utah Office of Tourism at nearly 23 million. The work that they do on behalf of the entire state and the communities is unparalleled, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them, especially the grant programs that they offer to all of us. So we're so grateful for that full funding. SB 194 is the Utah Main Street program, and this basically creates a Main Street, a statewide Main Street program within the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, and creates an advisory committee. So the goal of this is really to work with the National Main Street program and really leverage those opportunities for our individual communities who have Main Street programs. I know Monica has been part of a pilot program on that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let me also get through, before we turn it over to Monica to talk about that, the two other bills listed here, HB 247, which creates some amendments to the transient room tax legislation. Currently, the legislation, well, the new legislation really allows for broader usage of TRT within 4th, 5th, and 6th class counties with a national park or a national recreation area. This is obviously something that we pay very close attention to, as the transient room tax is a discriminatory tax against the lodgers. There's a lot of protectionism when it comes to those room taxes and how they're used, and making sure that those taxes are used to be reinvested in the tourism industry and reinvested in specifically to the industry that's impacted the most and is responsible for the burden of the room tax. But obviously, with tourism changing and evolving, especially in areas with national parks or a lot of fragile environment around them, tourism is really shifting to a management program and a little bit less of a marketing program. So this bill allows those counties to use those funds differently and really look at a more sophisticated model of tourism and recreation, and using traditional economic development as a way to do that. So it'll be interesting to watch this. I believe this bill allows for this diversification for 5 years. And then hopefully it can be revisited to make sure that those discriminatory taxes are being used for those industries that are discriminated against. The last bill is the Utah State Park Amendment, which basically creates a new state park. I like this bill because I think it just further recognizes the importance of our environment and our outdoor recreation and the outdoor recreation economy. So I'll be looking forward to visiting the new Utah Raptor State Park within the Dalton Wells area and further protecting those areas. Monica, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about the Main Street program.
Well, I just want to thank Senator Owens for running the bill. Like you said, Brigham City and Price have both been pilot projects for the Utah Main Street program. So we've benefited in trying and bringing the Utah Main Street program to our communities. And it really helps revitalize main streets in the communities that it serves. And it gives us guidance on the best programs and events and how to best market our main streets. And so we just really appreciate Senator Owens for running the bill and making it now statewide so that all cities will be able to benefit and have a Main Street program in their own communities. So thank you.
Senator, anything to add to that?
Thanks, Monica. You're too kind. This was a bill, if you don't know, passing a bill every time takes a chunk of your soul with it, because you just get so attached. And working with Monica and Nan Anderson and the group who worked on this, I love it because of any time when you think of your youth and Main Street, you know that's a gathering place. It's a it's a revitalization of your soul, and we need that if ever coming out of a pandemic. So you folks out there in business and commerce, make sure you're taking advantage of this to upgrade your main streets, and should be ongoing every year now for $500,000.
Thank you. I want to make sure we highlight just one couple other issues. Specifically, housing and homelessness has become an increasingly urgent issue across the state. Just wanted to highlight, I won't go through all these, but I know for many of the chambers around the state, the focus on housing has increased significantly. Thank you to the legislature for a significant investment in this issue this year. So quite a bit of money added and invested in the Olin Walker Housing Fund, creating a process by which municipalities can grant money, or grant land and property for affordable housing. Again, additional investments in affordable housing, creation of a housing transit reinvestment zone, and some Representative Ward's bill on single family housing amendments. If this is something that you're interested in, we would encourage you to look more closely at these bills and the summaries that we have sent you. And additionally, you're always welcome to join any of the meetings that we hold, many meetings on housing and other issues. Again, we are more or less out of time. Again, I would encourage everyone, you do have a summary of all of the impacted bills in your chat. But before we close, I do want to give Senators Owens and Senator Sandel, thank you both for joining us. And thank you to all of our chambers across the state who participated in this. Really working with the legislature. It's a pleasure to get to work with everyone across the state, all of the chambers representing business. It's representing all of you. It's a really great group of people to get to work with. But Senator Sandel and Senator Owens, any just kind of closing thoughts as we go into this interim, which again will be a very busy interim? Any last words for business owners across the state? Senator Owens, we'll go to you, and then Senator Sandel.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having us on, JC, and putting this together. It's all teamwork. We all are just wearing different hats and trying to move our state and businesses forward for our next generation. So thanks to all of you. It really is an honor to serve in the legislature with the good people like Senator Sandel. If you want a complicated, challenging bill, give it to him and he'll work through it, like egg laying facilities and stuff like that. It's so fun to be a part of what this state does. I wanted to shout out to Jennifer and the tourism industry. That is the golden egg, the golden goose. The goose that lays the golden egg, because that just keeps blessing our state every year. So it just takes everybody, every group. Nobody does it by ourselves.
Thanks, Senator.
Thanks, JC. I apologize for joining late. I was actually on another legislative meeting. And just want everybody just to be aware. I don't want to be a grand cheerleader here, but no other state in the nation has come through COVID as well as the state of Utah has economically. And that doesn't mean to minimize any of the people who have been ill or passed away. I think every one of us knows someone in that category, and my heart goes out to them. On the other hand, I have to congratulate the citizens of the state of Utah for just putting their heads down and their shoulders into it and going to work, finding ways to work, continuing to have business prosper in what really looked like maybe just an economic depression that we just didn't know if it had a bottom to it. So I appreciate everyone's leadership and input. Always glad to hear it, and just once again grateful for you to reach out and appreciate it, JC.
No, thank you to all of you. Thank you to everyone who participated while speaking today and who participated there. We really appreciate the association, and I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Thank you.